Alright, so I believe I'm recording. This is going to be a quick upload. My upload speed is horrible, but we're going to do this. Um, I don't know if you've seen the interview with Snowden, um, but this is basically what's going down. This is a couple of places have, released it's from Vice, like the head guy from Vice interviewed him. So now, whenever I get the laptop, I won't have to upload it. I can still do all this live. All right, Snowden. This is from April 11th. This is from the Mind Unleashed, but you can also see the video advice on YouTube. Snowden, governments using pandemic to build architecture of oppression surveillance. Snowden fears that the world leaders will hold on to the new emergency powers well after the pandemic ends. We saw this with 9/11. We see this with a lot of things. They grant themselves extraordinary powers. And what it basically comes down to is that, let me go through a couple of paragraphs real quick. In addition to quarantines and lockdowns, some governments like those in China, Taiwan, and South Korea have been using a surveillance strategy called contact tracing to reduce the spread of the novel coronavirus. While each country's contact tracing program has slight variations, all of them are essentially cell phone apps that keep a running record of the user's health and the health records of all the people they come in contact with. If a cell phone comes in close contact with somebody who might have the virus, the user receives a text message informing them and then instructing them to self-quarantine for 14 days. However, the quarantine is not necessarily voluntary. Depending on where you live. In some countries, phones have been used as a sort of house arrest, ankle bracelet that notify authorities if the person being monitored leaves the house for any reasons. These apps are being touted as a way to end the government shutdown in both Italy and UK, and it appears that officials are going to be taking things in that direction. Now a lot of us can be like, well, that's not a bad idea. I can see that because you just don't know who's sick. You can almost understand the reasoning behind it. But in steps, Edward Snowden. This guy, everybody knows what Snowden did. That nigga knows everything. In a recent interview with Vice, NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden expressed his concerns about the coming surveillance program, calling it the architecture of oppression. Quote, do you truly believe that when the first wave, the second wave, the 16th wave of the coronavirus is a long forgotten memory, that these capabilities will not be kept, that these data sets will not be kept, no matter how it's being used? What is being built is the architecture of oppression, Snowden said. Snowden recognized that the virus was a serious threat and said that the intelligence community was well aware that it was only a matter of time before a massive pandemic crippled the country, even back when he was working for the NSA. There is nothing more foreseeable as a public health crisis in a world where we're just living on top of each other in crowded and polluted cities than a pandemic. And every academic, every researcher who's looked at this knew that this was coming. And in fact, even intelligence agencies, I can tell you firsthand because they used to read the reports, had been planning for pandemics. Now, they're saying China is opening up, but, he even gets into that. Snowden questioned the positive numbers that have come out of China in recent weeks and pointed out that the Chinese government has been credited with reducing the spread of the illness because they took such draconian measures during the lockdown. Perhaps the extreme strategy is not working as well as they say, but since the government maintained tight control over any information coming out of the country, it is impossible to say for sure. I mean, you've got countries, India, Hungary, the governments are deciding, they're giving themselves the right to decide what is information and what is misinformation. And this is nothing. I've got a friend we've got to meet, and there's things that we want to talk about, and I will absolutely, because I think he's followed this end. I read it, I see it happening, And like I said, there's things that I'm still formulating. He is gung ho on it, so he has more answers than I have. If you're looking at countries like China, where cases have where cases seem to have leveled off, how much can we trust those numbers that are actually true? I don't think we can. Particularly, we see the Chinese government recently working to expel Western journalists at precisely this moment where we need credible, independent warnings in this region, Snowden said. You do. They're kicking people out. I mean, they just opened up Wuhan, and I think 55 people instantly left. They're like, fuck this, we're out. In a statement published on Friday, Apple and Google announced that they were teaming up in a rare partnership to develop compatible contact tracing apps, which they claim will work on an opt-in basis. Now, first off, Google, Google, and how they were started. They were funded. There is an independent, investment arm of the CIA. This is not a conspiracy. They helped start Google. Google, all this. They track you. So it's very strange for Apple and Google to be working together, especially saying it's an opt-in basis with Google. With Apple, you'd almost believe them, but now I'm starting to feel that they're corrupted. However, according to Bloomberg, these companies are planning to eventually build the contact tracing into the device's updates. Apple and Google insist that you'll still be able to opt out of the program if you don't want to participate, but it is possible that rankings on these apps will be used to gain entry into grocery stores or larger businesses and events once the economy opens up again. Papers, please. Papers, please. It's coming. And you can see, full episode of Vice right there. As it's only 11 o'clock. Why my mouth work? Authoritarianism spreads as emergency laws proliferate. As we sacrifice our rights, we also sacrifice our capability to arrest the slide into a less liberal and less free world, Snowden warned. So, yes, you're seeing it happen. There was just a, let me see if I can find this article real quick. There was just a ruling that, first off, you have, let me see, let me find the original link. Give me a second here. It was a link I think I put on my personal page. Supreme Court gives cops free rein to stop cars. Only one, this was before the Supreme Court. Sotomayor is the only one that dissented. And what it basically meant, that the way that it was some guy versus Kansas, where they, the cop saw the truck, knew who the truck belonged to, ran the tags, and saw that, the owner of the truck had a suspended license. So now, he couldn't verify that that was the owner driving, but he pulled him over anyway and, arrested him. And so the argument was, well, that's a violation of the Fourth. You can't presume that the guy is driving. It could be anybody driving, but you pulled him over because you believed that he was. Now this gets into what other issues that. Police, have been given, which is qualified immunity. And what this basically means, and this is how it ties into the Supreme Court ruling, is that as long as a cop, he can actually enforce a law that doesn't exist. He can think that you're breaking a law and arrest you and go through all these things. And then if you go through and say, well, no, it's a false arrest, that law doesn't exist. Well, he doesn't get in trouble. It's qualified immunity because he thought that he was doing the right thing. So this just ties in more with, as a police officer, you would think that they would learn the laws. But they don't have to. With a qualified immunity ruling, they don't have to actually know the law that they're, charged with enforcing. And now that, even with being pulled over for suspicion, Now that's diminished. And I mean, you can get pulled over for nothing, and they can just say, "Well, I thought I smelled weed," and then they search your car. You know, so you're seeing these things being eroded after 9/11. I mean, they roll through all kinds of things. The TSA will still give you a cup check. They'll give you a cup check to your kid. So they've had it where they've made a mother drink her own breast milk to prove that it wasn't bomb juice. Seriously. Seriously. So you were looking at, let me pull this up. And this is from Forbes. So, this Kansas versus Glover. The court's decision on Monday in Kansas versus Glover, which upheld stopping a car based on the owner having a revoked license, not only impermissible and unnecessarily reduces the state's burden of proof. Now everybody's going to use this. This went for the Supreme Court, and this is, according to Sotomayor, the only dissenting. Not only impermissible and unnecessary reduces the state's burden of proof, Sotomayor warned, it also destroys the Fourth Amendment jurisprudence that requires individualized suspicion. You can, whatever they want to do. And now they're granting themselves more powers during this. So it's going to be a police state, all in the name of national security. So, yeah, that's, Chris Allen, is a Facebook friend we're going to meet. I believe he does have let me click here and give you the name of, he has a show, My Brother's Keeper, I believe is what it is, on YouTube. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick and, let me tell you so that way you guys can check him out, because he is following, yes, My Brother's Keeper, on YouTube. And I don't know how to put a link up. Sorry, Chris. But follow him as well, because this is multiple fronts. Like I said, we're getting into layers here, and we're peeling back the layers, and it's not going to be pretty. So anyway, see how long this takes to load up, and happy Easter. There's a lot more news. I'm going to start doing news at 5. I wake up at 5 a.m. I can't sleep for shit, man. So I'm going to start trying to do 2 newscasts a day, one at 5 a.m., one at night. I do have, I'm looking into some software to where, a call-in thing where you guys can call in, because even just plugging up the phone to the mixer, the audio from my side doesn't really work. And it could be just because I'm a retard, which I am a retard. I'll be the first to tell you. So it could be just, user error. But, yeah, we're going to do a few things. And it's not really going to cost me anything, so that's why I'm doing it. And we'll see. So keep that in mind. Maybe it's time we brush up on the Republic, Plato's Republic. Maybe it's time that we get into that. And that's it. 13 minutes, probably going to take 3 hours to upload this.